forgot to do it earlier. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. I think, yep, hold on. There we are.
Okay, now look what we have there at the top of the screen and ask yourself, what could that be? What are some thoughts that you have? That would mean you'd need to talk. Okay, nobody has any idea what that is?
It looks like a stained glass window
Beautiful. What else could it look like?
or a mandala.
A mandala? What else could it look like?
Kaleidoscope.
There you go. It could look like a kaleidoscope too. So what we're going to talk about are what we look at as an inclusive society. We're going to look at it on a macro level. And then by the end of the class, I hope that you will have taken a look at it at a micro level, which is your level. So if I could have somebody, actually, I think this was part of your assignment. You were supposed to geographic shapes we have in the Islamic. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So what could we say about this picture? So would we say that it is a black and white? Would we say it's colorful? What else could we say about this picture?
It's symmetrical.
It's symmetrical. Lovely. Anything else? Okay. So let me get to the point. The point of this is we look a lot better and a lot more beautiful if we will work together, right? So if we look at all these colors and in my opinion, looking at this color, all these colors and all these shapes, it makes for a richer and more broad world. So I'd like us to think in terms of, no longer in terms of some of those words that we think about, why we put somebody in one category and somebody in another category. I'd like us to think more in terms of inclusivity. I'd like us to think in terms of others' needs and ways of understanding in the natural world. So that's hard. I mean, we all know this. We're all adults. I'm sure most of you have read this. You know that, you know this. You are adults. Nobody would disagree with any of these. Would anybody disagree with the first one? It's hard to do without having control of the screen. All right, I will just have to call on you. I'm so sorry. And I don't like to do that. You can just say pass if you don't want to be called on. All right. So how about you? Amanda, do you think, tell me about point number one, and read it out loud, please.
Consider others' needs, ways of understanding the natural world, and ways of engaging with the course content as important.
So I want you to be thinking about that, because this class is not going to be a class that's taught by me or Karen. This is a class that you're going to teach each other. Okay. How about Galaxy tab, point 2?
Ensure those who are not members of the majority of our training program, those we present our content to, and those we engage with as master naturalists, feel invited, welcomed, and something is blocking my screen. Oh, understood and able to participate.
Again, aren't those lovely platitudes? I like them.
Yeah.
Next, please. Karen, next. There we go. Okay. So now when we talk about all of those, and they are lovely platitudes, are they? I mean, is there anybody who would disagree with any of that was stated? Is there? I mean, there might be. If there is, I might have to invite you out of the group. But bottom line is they're wonderful. They are platitudes, but they're also a way of life, a way of thinking. The problem is, I wonder, we'll find out about what that problem is when you go into breakout groups. So now we have definitions. Now these definitions were part of your homework assignment, and they were definitions that are kind of pillars, if you will, for the macro. Okay, so we're good with the macro thought. Now I just make up words from time to time. So if you want to know what a macro thought is, just let me know. Try umbrella. It's the big one, right? It goes over everything. Okay, so how about Jen? Talk to us about diversity.
Diversity, Differences among members of a community along one or more dimension of social identity, able-bodiedness, age, class, gender, race, religion, or sexual orientation.
And you know what? There's a whole bunch missing from there, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because you're going to tell each other. All right. Mary, can you tell us about equity?
Yes, equity is all individuals have equal opportunity to access and to benefit from participation in a community.
Okay, so we're going to wonder, what community are we talking about? I suppose in this case, we're going to be talking about master naturalists, but not really, right? Because part of our job, if job's the right word, part of our life goal is to be working with other people. So we'll have to figure out about that equity. By the way, don't ask me to drive to Tucson on the freeway. Do I have equal opportunity? Maybe, maybe not. All right, how about you, Jill? Let's hear about inclusion and inclusivity.
Inclusion, inclusivity. All individuals are welcomed, supported, and valued as integral members of a community.
So again, with these definitions, does anybody have any problem with any one of those? And of course, no one is going to say yes, and you shouldn't say yes. But the bottom line with this also is it's a lot harder than you think.
Can I say something about this?
Absolutely.
So this is a space that I really struggle with inclusivity, because it requires a lot of different things. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, so our group, for example, is meeting like many hours to get this certification and so forth. And yet that means that we're like far away from our family and having to, like, you know, dedicate these hours, which is great, but that also means that it's exclusionary in a way, you know? And so it's a space where I'm constantly struggling. Like, where do you draw the line? Like, where is that line? Where does it get drawn, essentially, if that makes sense? I don't know.
Sarah, it makes 100% sense. And that what I liked about your response, because I'm not going to give you any answers, right? But what I liked about your response was because you personalized it. So thank you for that. Okay, next, please. Okay, so we're all in a community right now. Our community is the community of master naturalists. Well, I guess we have a few other communities. Sarah just popped one out. What was that community?
Her family.
Her family, of course. So does anybody have another community besides a master naturalist?
Yeah.
The people I work
Yeah.
with, that's a community.
Which one?
My coworkers. I have a community there.
Yep. Who else? What other
neighbors?
Absolutely. What else?
My
Friends.
learning community.
Okay, so let's go back to, I'm just going to call it kaleidoscope just for the fun of it. So let's go back to that image of the kaleidoscope. What could you think about that kaleidoscope when we talk about implications for communities, implications for us, implications for the definitions that are so lovely, but how does that work? Sarah, good question that you asked. You're really going to get us going. Okay, so now we have research. So I'm going to talk about research here. Now, Roger, you are very good with research. So Roger, you could probably tell me you probably have some thoughts about research. So in this particular grouping of numbers. So I'm just going to, Roger, would you have some thoughts? I don't want you to give them. Do you have some thoughts? Did Roger leave us? I guess he did.
No, I'm trying to track some emails down.
Oh, so much for this community. All right.
Yes.
Anyway, okay. So
do I have thoughts about research? Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Can I express them? Maybe not.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Because what did I just do there with him?
Put him on the spot.
Did I say he had to do this?
No.
Think about what our responses do to somebody else and what their responses do back to me. What is our interaction? And let's go back to those definitions in a minute. So We have a couple of thoughts here. I personally think you need to think long and hard about these. I think you need to think long and hard about the validity. You need to think a lot about who answered these research things. Okay, so if we use the kaleidoscope as our lens, do you think we would arrive at the same findings? And I am going to turn this over now to the small group breakouts. These are your questions. Go over talk about kaleidoscopes and talk about your thoughts on the macro level and then bring it down to the micro level. Micro level is personal. Personalize this, because none of us is going to save the world alone, maybe together, but alone no one is. But we might be able to save our next door neighbor, or our next door neighbor might be able to save us by living with these wonderful thoughts. Any questions about what you're expected to do at this moment? Oh dear, sorry, that's my dog.
Okay, we're going to break you out randomly, or well, actually Zoom is going to break you randomly into 7 groups. So there will be about 4 to 5 in a group. You'll be in your group for 10 minutes to discuss what that question you have there, and use your own personal experience, your own personal history and such, share among your group. And as I said, these are randomly assigned. So you're automatically going to be in one of the rooms. You'll be invited and just accept the invitation. We'll call you back in 10 minutes. Make sure that each group has somebody who is willing to be the spokesperson to give a brief report on what your group discussed and came up with by consensus. So here we go.
How's everybody doing?
How are you?
Good. So, any thoughts on?
I do have a thought.
Okay, go for it. What is your name? I'm sorry, it says Galaxy.
I'm sorry, I need to fix that. I'm Jana.
Jana. All right, nice to meet you.
Galaxy tab, no. I'm wondering whether there's been any consideration of socioeconomics as sort of being one of the factors here. And the reason I say that is I've spent a lot of time in national parks. Probably no more than anybody else, but I'm trying to visit all of them in my, retirement years. So, I do see a lot of people of color, and a lot of Asians, a lot of people, Asian Indians, tourists from South America. I don't know if it's a lot, like I don't keep count, but I remember that. I remember visiting the Grand Canyon on Christmas Day once with my husband, and we were like one of the few white people there. Everybody else was non-Christian, right? Because it was Christmas Day. So a lot of Asians. So my question is, I guess what I'm thinking is that it may have to do with socioeconomics as much as anything. I mean, it does cost money, to get to a national park, to take a vacation, to stay in a hotel, to pay for food. It's not something you're probably going to find anybody without sufficient income doing.
It's leisure time.
Yeah, it's leisure time.
Vacation time.
I have noticed that there's a couple of groups that REI is promoting for diversity in open spaces or nature. Sorry, it's been a long day, guys. So I'm struggling. I'm on the struggle bus today. But I like that, I'm seeing, more spotlight and communities of groups that are, wanting to be like, hey, join us. We go skiing. I saw another platform of different ethnicities in skiing, but it's great. It's the more the merrier, right?
Mhm.
Definitely. I'm reading over. I took a picture of the slide and I'm just looking over it.
I did too.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, is like, does it? I'm thinking out loud. I don't know if this makes sense or not, but does it make sense to research that? Is it like worth researching?
Hmm.
That being what?
What specifically?
Just
Worth
like researching like different ethnicities that go out in nature. Like, I mean, is that like worth doing, or I mean, is it that important to do? I mean, what's the outcome of it, I guess you would say.
Right. What's the purpose of it?
Yeah. I'm not saying if it's right or wrong. I'm just curious, like, is it, are you just researching it to research something?
Right.
Oh,
Right.
for me, I wouldn't be interested in anything like that, but I know there are analytical people out there that would love to know the numbers on such things like that. I'm just happy to see other people on the trails and, love to
Yes.
introduce people that don't go out in nature to it. So, and it's a crazy time right now, and we need to be more accepting of people.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, up until recently, I played a lot of soccer. So a lot of the kind of my other community was a lot of immigrants. But like just a good example is a friend of mine is from Trinidad, has long dreadlocks, is actually kind of like part black, part Asian, very interesting guy, but very good friend of mine. And this was when I lived in Louisiana. We decided at one point, because I'm such a big fan of doing things outdoor, we were staying in a cabin on a creek and invited him along. He was like, "I'm never going to Mississippi." He was just scared to death. But once he was there, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, he had the most unbelievable time just swimming in the creek and things like that. And I do feel like certainly a lot of people are just, it was like, my kind doesn't belong here. I'm going to be looked at. I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be, attacked, so yeah, that just is something that kind of occurred to me.
Mhm. So what do we do to make people feel welcome? I don't know. I mean, we're sort of strangers in the same place.
I just still say hi, and
Say
if you're running a program or doing a table, um, just be nice to everyone, and interact with everyone as much as you can, and
exactly.
call it
Yeah.
good. I mean,
It's as much as you can do. I
yeah, you can't
agree.
play God out there, so
Exactly.
yeah. I don't even know if I'm supposed to answer because I've already done this, so I don't know. How's everything else going? You guys feeling okay?
Yeah, struggling a little bit to keep up with everything. How about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
I'm having
weeks.
a hard time keeping up with
Yeah,
everything.
it was about this time last year, like weeks 3 and 4, when I started to feel it and started like question, what am I doing this right? Am I supposed to, continue doing this? Is it too much? And then it just sort of like smoothed out.
Did.
Um,
Oh,
and I slowly
That's good.
started getting in the groove and whatnot. So hopefully that happens for you guys as well, but you won't be the first people to think that. You won't be the last people to think that. As far as
I
getting
mean, it's
everything.
so well organized, but despite the fact that it's so well organized, I still feel like I don't really have it organized in my mind about what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
basically I'm putting one foot in front of the other and keeping going. I don't know if I'm keeping up or not, but I just do the best you can.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting that out there, Dave, because it's helpful.
Yeah,
That you
and
put.
you know, you don't have to be an expert in any of this. It's, you know, it just got to keep reminding yourself it's a volunteer program. You know,
Right.
you don't need 100%. You just need that 80%, and you know, do what you can do. And yeah, I mean, even now as like a mentor, I'm like, I'm not an expert in anything. I'm just sort of, you know, sharing my experiences. So
Mhm.
yeah, just it's volunteer and it's fun, and keep it simple. I don't think anyone's gonna fault you for that. I wouldn't.
Okay, good.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, I had a little trouble getting in, so.
That's okay. Do you have any thoughts?
Oops. There. Okay.
Do you have any thoughts on the topic, or also we were just talking about how you're doing with everything?
Oh, I'm doing fine. This topic is a little, I don't know, hard for me to adjust to because I do have some issues with inclusive because I am deaf. So I wear hearing aids, and there are times when that conflicts with what we're doing or whatever. So that's sort of a interesting concept that I didn't have before with other things. So
How are you feeling with all your assignments and everything?
oh, fine.
Good. Okay. Did anyone feel confused with the logistics and all that?
I haven't had a chance to really to really try it myself. Until I do that, I understood what he said, but I'd have to look at the software, you know.
Okay.
Has anyone logged into that system yet?
No,
I
I
haven't.
didn't get the email this
Yeah, I
morning.
didn't realize it was a 24-hour. I was like, oh, I'll get to this later. That it's like, oh, there's a temporary password, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the first time. Yeah.
Okay.
I've
So you
used it with other organizations, so I'm a little familiar with it. So
Good.
Yeah, as long as you just sign in with the temporary password and then go back to it later, you'll be fine.
Okay. To remember to do that.
I guess they're gonna ask for a spokesperson. Does anyone want to speak on the question?
Can it be you?
Can it be me? Sure. Give me something to say. I'll be honest. I struggled with this topic last year and then this year, and when we have to do it for school, because I mean, I know it's important to learn about, but like, let's just all be nice to each other
I
and
I
know.
know. I
yeah.
know.
call it a day.
I'm
Like, why are we, you know, spinning these
I
wheels?
know.
I'm really struggling with it just because of everything that's going on in the world. And
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just like, let's just give each other hope,
Yeah.
and be nice to each other, be kind. We're all just walking this planet for a short period of time. Why is there
Mhm.
so much anger? I don't get it. I just
And
Yeah.
we just want to be
Yeah.
out there helping nature and learning about nature,
Exactly.
teaching about nature, and let's just keep it with that. Just,
We're
be
not,
nice.
and we're not like telling anybody they can't be there. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're generally welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we need to be positive. So,
Right.
you know, not talk about this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Let's be a little bit more positive in what we talk about. So,
Yeah. So we could say, what, whoever we encounter, in nature, keep it positive and keep it
Right.
welcoming.
Yes.
Perfect. That's
All
a
right,
perfect
we'll go with that.
summary. Perfect summary.
Go team.
All right,
Okay.
Dave, thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, as we wait for everybody to come back, room 6 did go blank. All kinds of crazy reasons. So sorry, Donna. Hopefully you found another room to go into. And if you ever get bumped out of a room or something happens, just come back to the main room and I can manually assign you somewhere. So don't let that be a deterrent. Okay, I think everybody is back. So Kathleen, do you want to continue your facilitation? Kathleen?
She may not
Okay,
know we're
Kathleen.
back.
What's that? Wrong. Oh,
She
not
literally left the room.
Kathleen McCoy.
I
Sorry.
mean, she may literally have left the room. She was in our group and she may have actually.
She's here. She was
No,
just
Oh, there she is.
muted.
I'm here,
She's
I'm
back.
here. I didn't go away. First and foremost, I want to tell you that I spied You made me so happy and you made me so hopeful. I have never been lately in groups like this where people figured out so many important points in such a short amount of time. It might have a whole lot to do with the fact that you're very caring and loving, every single one of you. So I did a happy dance. And while I was doing a happy dance, I couldn't figure out how to get back in. But now, so Karen, can I have a screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, so we did look at a lot of implications, and what was very interesting was that it didn't seem to matter whether we were talking about master naturalists or other things in our lives. These were very important principles that cut across. But again, everybody will have their own, I'm going to say their own collection of ideas. I was only in one group. Karen, did you want me to go ahead and then just ask each group?
Yes, you're the facilitator.
I'm the facilitator. Okay. Do not label me. Okay.
I'm just handing you power.
I don't want any power and I don't want any labels. I want to be in that kaleidoscope, fuzzy or not. Okay. Because one day I'm one way and another day I'm another way. So who knows? But let's get it off of me and let's get back onto group one. Group one, share what made me have a happy dance, please.
So this is Kathleen Dixon. Let me see if I'm, yeah. And we had, I think, a good conversation. It would have been nice if we could have done it longer. At first, we talked about what does the kaleidoscope mean? And so some people really felt like that spoke to them, that there's all kinds of, it's like a puzzle that's all coming together, but that also sometimes you can only see one part of it and you don't see the whole thing. And then, so there's different viewpoints what the kaleidoscope meant. And then we talked about some of the barriers that stop people from being able to participate and in different activities, whether it's they don't feel, some people in our group felt like they, and me too, inadequate at first, like, well, there'll be other people in the group who know more than I do, and they have expertise and my expertise isn't the same as their expertise, or I don't have that. And we talked about how that could stop a person from joining, or the ability to spend the hours. And so, I mean, I think we can celebrate the fact that this group does have a very diverse backgrounds, and but that there's lots of barriers that get in the way of people participating in programs like this and other organizations as well.
Anybody from the group want to add to Kathleen's comments? Okay, so make sure you have somebody who wrote down your ideas so that we can share with each other at a later date. And remember, this is not a one and done thing. We want to keep we are going to keep these ideas and use them throughout the entire 16 weeks. All right, I can either make you freak out or I can simply let you go in order. So can we go in order so you can have a little predictability about when you're going to be called on? Group 2, please. You're up.
This is Fred. I think we were
Thank you,
group
Fred.
2. I think we were group 2. So I will say that our group's discussion was around 2 things. One, recognizing that as master naturalists, part of our mission will be to teach. And then that part of that is then to pull in different groups and make sure there's a certain inclusion. If certain groups don't understand or aren't aware of the opportunities that we make available to them, we need, in our thought, we need to go out and make an extra effort to make sure they're informed, that they know of the opportunities. If it's up to them to take advantage of opportunities, of course, it's got to, there's a pull, there's an educational aspect to it, but there's also making sure they know about opportunities or and that they're available to these groups. So that was one aspect that we saw as part of the Master Naturalist mission. Another that we talked about was also assuring that there's access to these opportunities as well. So not only that, the opportunities are advertised and known, but that those individuals can get there. And this is a more complex part because there's only so much you can do at times. But we brought up, can people afford the fees of certain programs, or can people get to a location for an educational opportunity or an outdoor activity? So that might be something we'd have to organize and figure out, or help recognize that there's a possible problem there, instead of just making an assumption that everyone, for example, has a car and has the money to pay a fee. So that was the essence of how we thought about this.
And do you think that, Fred, would you like to see if there's anybody else in your group who wants to add any more to this?
Sure. They
Okay,
can speak up.
Or they could just say pass. Or they could just sit there.
So far they're passing. We had a good discussion.
Yeah, we had a good chat. I think Fred pretty much summed it up. So
Good.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you. Thank you, group 2. How about group 3?
So we did the same thing as the other groups. We started out by talking about the kaleidoscope and what that would look like. But then we really got into how to be inclusive at a place, and especially a place out in nature where there aren't set rules. There's no one to enforce the rules, even if there were rules. And so the point was, we all have to be inclusive. It doesn't work if I'm inclusive and another group shuns me, then that's not inclusivity. Everybody needs to be that way. And so, and then to make your own space. We talked about on a hiking trail, how all these bikers, hikers, and horses have to share the same trail. And sometimes that means getting out of somebody's way so they can use the trail, not trying to push by each other and someone almost getting pushed off, but I get out of the way so the bicycle can go by. And that is part of inclusivity. And the other stuff everybody else already said.
Did you want to invite any members of your group to speak up?
Sure. Anyone else want to add?
No, I think you did a great job, Joette. Thanks.
Thanks, Colleen.
Okay, thank you very much. It was very interesting. Group 4, please.
All right. So we talked about a lot of different things in our group, and we sort of combined it into one statement. Basically, whenever we're in nature and whoever we encounter, keep it positive, be kind, respect the earth, and just give grace and patience and understanding.
Did you have any other details you might want to add? This was very, very good. I mean,
No, that was basically it.
sounds good to me. Group 5.
So we had a really big freewheeling discussion about kind of I mean, we kind of talked about like why, you know, there might be a disproportionate amount of people of color outdoors, and I think what it really comes down to is just like the history of systemic racism and poverty in this country and the implications of that. And as far as what that means for us as master naturalists, I would say is to like not shy away from these issues and try to think through these issues and things like that. Like we had a long discussion about like environmental racism, essentially the idea of like how particular groups of people of color or people who are more impoverished than others, you know, are situated in this country close to sites of pollution and factories and things like that. And I think this idea of access to nature is another form of environmental racism. And yeah, I guess what that means for us as master naturalists is, to me, like that's a big part of the big part of the puzzle is this sort of political side of it, where if you really want to think about these issues, then you kind of have to start unpacking a lot about why there is racism in America or why there is systemic injustice. And I think diving into that history is also a good segue into understanding this thing that we talked about earlier in the week when we're talking about sense of place and how it's all kind of related. Like we had this discussion about how in Texas they were banning books and like Chicano studies and things like that, and how that's just such an affront to the sense of place of that state, because you know so many people there are Chicanos originally, you know, a Mexican state. And yeah, I guess not to get like too in the weeds about it, I guess like I would say just like not shy away from these discussions and these issues. That's the big takeaway.
Anybody from this group want to add anything to this? Okay. This is group, I lost track. This is group 6, 5. Amir, what group are you in?
5.
5?
I believe we're 5.
Okay. Is there a group 6?
No, group 6 did not form.
Is there a group 7?
There were people in room 7.
There was 4 of us in group 7.
Okay. Would group 7 like to let us know what you guys were thinking about?
I can, yeah. Where's the rest of my group? Anyways, yeah, I can go. I wasn't taking all the notes, but one of the big things we were talking about was the historical basis for what we kind of see today. And one of the things I brought up was the generational trauma thing. And the example I used was, you know, 50 to 60 years ago, we still had legal segregation in this country based on race, right? So, I mean, we're talking about today, people's parents and grandparents. So we're only 1 or 2 generations removed from a pretty traumatic period in our country's history. And so those kind of thoughts, mentalities, you know, of not wanting, whether legally or just preferably not wanting to participate in certain things, that gets passed down from one generation to the next. And, you know, I think although I mean, it is, I think, but, you know, my opinion may be biased, being a person that's not of color, right? We'd like to think it's, you know, getting better, and I think it probably is, but there's still a ways to go.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments to this point, to Sean's point?
I'll just add a little bit that we talked about access and the you know challenge in terms of access, but I think to Sean's point, to build on that there's legitimate fear that some peoples have in entering these spaces. So we need to respect that.
Okay, excellent. Do we have a group 8?
No, there were 7 rooms.
7 rooms, okay. I hope we didn't lose those folks that were in the missing room.
No, I'll explain later.
Oh, never mind. Okay, would you please put the screen back up? And I'll probably get out of here because I think it's about time for you to go back on.
Well, before we do, we're going to take our bio break now, and we're going to take 15 minutes because there's one thing we want you to do in addition to your bio break. There is an article that we added to module 3. It's the very last thing. It says, "All Birders Unite." We're going to be discussing that when we get back. It's about 1.5 pages, 2 pages long. It is specifically about getting people involved with birding, but it has other implications. We'll talk about that later. So bio break starts now. We'll reconvene at 7:05. So take your bio break and please read that article before we reconvene. And we will see you in 15 minutes. Some Earth heroines that we talked about at the very beginning. Could we make any similarities among them? What were the similarities among those that we discussed? I know it was an hour and a half ago, but we'll have good memories. Collectively, we'll remember who they were. So what similarities
There's a lot of white
did you
people.
miss? What's that, Colleen?
There was a lot of white people.
Yes. Was there any person of color that was mentioned in that? I don't think so,
That I
unless
can think
Annette
of.
Prince is one. I'm sorry, was there one?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Well, I think Robin Wall Kimmerer was listed in the chat, and so I think maybe she qualifies.
That's a good one, Amanda. I'd forgotten that one was in the chat. We didn't have a chance to discuss her. And we will have a chance to discuss her briefly in just a moment. So thinking back to why participation rates in natural resources and outdoor activities and such seems to be lower, at least according to that North Carolina study, why do you suppose, well, you talked about that in your groups, but why do you suppose when we think of Earth heroes, we only think of those people? Is that ingrained in our culture, in our background? Have we only associated with those people?
Can I just say something before that's kind of slightly off topic of that?
Okay.
And for all respect for people of color, I want to acknowledge that we selected a lot of women at a time when women were not a part of the inclusion. And you think about Rachel Carson and Jane Goodall, who really had to fight against cultural norms for them as well. So despite the fact that they were white, they were not part of the
establishment
at that point in time. So
thank you, Kathleen. That's a really good point. For those of us who remember when Rachel Carson was around, she was pilloried when Silent Spring was produced, and she had written a few books before, some wonderful books about her observations of nature. But the American Chemical Council went after her tooth and tongue, tried to dismiss her as, a female who didn't know what she was talking about, and her credentials could stack up against any of theirs. And it was a tragedy that we lost her so early in life, but in that time and place, she was a real groundbreaker. So with that in mind, we're going to share our screen and look at some people.
Can I add one last thing?
Oh, please.
The other thing is there was a little bit of an assumption, for example, on my part with the question, which is who are like those famous people that you would know. So for example, I know a lot of people in North Africa, that I would have, that I thought of, but I wasn't going to mention them because there's too much of a story that goes with it. Because you don't know who they are, or I'm making an assumption that you don't know who they are,
And in one of the classes that I teach, we talk about Earth heroes and heroines, and they investigate some very young people. Let me toss this out. Who is maybe one of the youngest people you know of, maybe not personally, but who is doing something really, really proactive on behalf of the planet? Who is, well, I guess the ones I'm thinking about are now both in their 20s, but they began much younger. Who might come to mind?
Greta, I can't remember her last name, but she's the teenager from I think Sweden. She wrote a book. I don't really know that much about her because I haven't read the book, but exceptional young lady, putting, you know, the needs of the world in front of her and in front of herself, you know. It's just that gives me hope for the future.
Yeah, Greta Thunberg. She suffers from what once was called Asperger syndrome, which is on the autism spectrum. And maybe that has given her a special gift that the rest of us haven't had. Who here has heard of Boyan Slat? S-L-A-T? Oh my goodness. Boyan Slat started the Ocean Cleanup Foundation when he was 18. He didn't start the foundation when he was 18, but when he was 18, he's a Dutch kid, and he dropped out of school because he was pretty tired of all the plastic he was encountering in the ocean. So he got some of the best money you can imagine through crowdfunding, hired 65 of the best brains in marine science and engineering, et cetera, pulled them together, and they now have a boom out in the Pacific Gyre that is collecting a lot of that plastic. And the goal is to clean up 50% of that Pacific Gyre, I think within 10 years, and then continue on from there. So young people, innovative minds and such. So with that, let's see how many of these people you might recognize. Okay, can everybody see the screen? Okay, whoops, let's try
the other way.
There we go. Okay, so let's talk about contributions that some people have been making to the great outdoors. And let's first of all note, a lack of diversity in the outdoors does not equal a lack of interest among people of color. This is often assumed. Research shows among school kids, K-12 kids, one of the reasons they don't go into a natural resource related career or one related to the outdoors is because they simply do not know anybody who is in that profession. It's not that they're ignorant and don't want to do it. It's just that they don't know anyone who is there. So you may remember the Cooper incident. He was the young black birder in New York Central Park who was out birding and was reported and had all kinds of law enforcement hassles and such. And that led to the creation of Black Birders Week. This week-long social media event celebrated Black outdoor enthusiasts, naturalists, and conservationists, and it served to break down stereotypes of Black people in the outdoors and in STEM. So let's take a look at who some of these people are. Everyone has special talents. Anyone know who the lady is in the upper left?
I have forgotten her name, but she's planted millions of trees across Africa. Oh my
Yes.
God. She passed also, I think.
Yes, I think she was only in her 60s. We're losing some of these people way too early. That is Wangari Maathai, a Kenyan lady. Accomplishments, she won a Nobel Peace Prize. She began the Green Belt movement in Kenya, empowering women in some of those remote villages to plant native trees and replant them. If you've been to Kenya, you may have noticed that there are a whole lot of eucalyptus because so many of the native trees were cut down for firewood and other uses. Eucalyptus are great trees, but they really belong in Australia, not in Africa. So the Green Belt movement is alive and strong. They have some incredible accomplishments to their name. The other thing that I so admire about Maathai is she was the first female in East Central Africa to earn a PhD, and she did it at an American university. But her work was all done in Kenya. Okay, this lady to the upper right was mentioned before. She was mentioned in the chat.
Robin Wall Kimmerer.
Yes, and tell us what is so special about Kimmerer.
She's a Native American writer who shares the Native American culture and how it intersects with nature and helps us understand what's been lost as that culture has been lost.
She is pretty terrific. Give us the name of her book and why everybody should read it. I assume you've read it.
Yes, Braiding Sweetgrass is one of her books, and it's what I said, a combination of Native American stories and beliefs with plants, and then Gathering Moss is also very excellent.
So if you've not read either one of those, I recommend starting with Braiding Sweetgrass. after reading that, I wanted to go explore a swamp with the lady. I mean, she can make everything in nature become so incredibly special. She's a gifted writer. She's almost a poetic writer. So
Can,
put
can I
her,
can I add a couple more things to that?
please.
So she, my understanding is she's also a member of the Potawatomi tribe or
Yes.
nation. And then the other thing that's really interesting is that she was trained in botany. So she went into, like, I can't remember what the university was, but got a Western science education in botany, and had to really fight a system to kind of create her voice of ethnobotany, which, like she says in Braiding Sweetgrass, is about weaving this indigenous knowledge, the stories, the narratives in a way that actually makes it validated as a science. And this is where it started her and people like Gregory Cajete and a lot of other academic indigenous people, this movement of like native science, like the idea that there's a science as well behind all this native knowledge, which I think is really powerful. It's not a matter of just, making us connect to the natural world and being very beautiful and poetic, but they've, created a whole new academic space, which I think is hard.
Yes, I have attended a couple of her online webinars. If you have the chance to do it, they are well worth doing. Just you can find her easily by a simple Google search. And thank you for that additional information. Sorry. Okay, lower right. A name that should be familiar to everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Who is that?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yes, and what do we know about Dr. Tyson?
He
What's his
explained
specialty?
astronomy.
Astronomy, yes. Anything else we should know about him?
I'll add that I guess I first heard about him when he did a reboot of the Cosmos series. That was the Carl Sagan series from the 1970s, so kind of a new version of that. And so it's as an astrophysicist, he's got stuff. I mean, science in general, exploration of space, but also great scientific discoveries and just a better understanding of our natural world. That whole series, both the original Sagan one and the Neil deGrasse Tyson one, are excellent.
Thank you, Brad. Some of us are old enough to remember Carl Sagan's PBS series way back when. I think you can still access those. Anybody know? Can we still access those? If you have PBS Passport, we can check that out later. Lower left, has anybody encountered this young lady who's probably in her mid-30s by now? This young's name is Sutta Callinglast. She's a registered member of the Blackfeet tribe, has a master's in hydrology, and she was in Phoenix. Unfortunately for us, she got a wonderful grant, but she had to return to Montana, her home state, to work on the grant. But she does incredible things with water and water delivery and water quality among various tribal members. And she has a website, Indigenous Vision. And I can't remember if it's singular or plural. There's one in Canada, the same name, and hers, and one is singular, one is plural. And anyway, Sutta Callinglast, a real inspiration. I was lucky enough to sit on a board with her and until she moved away, and I miss her greatly. So what similarities or differences do you see among the people here versus the ones we originally mentioned in our Earth heroes and heroines?
It's a diverse group.
Very diverse group. We have Native Americans, we have African, two of African descent, one an American and one a Kenyan, two different members of Native tribe, registered in different tribes, but doing unbelievable, amazing things in their writings and in their music and in the work that they do with others. Now, let's take a look at something that we just want to touch on this because the United States has had a little bit of a tainted history. When we were growing up in history classes, we learned all the good things that our country had done. But Sometimes we learn later in life things that we probably shouldn't know when we're young because it might sour us on our country. But the rationale for creating parks was to promote the American identity, which is primarily white, male, and young. Now that's 100+ years ago. And we now may step back in abject horror and think that can't be, but it was a different time, a different place, a different worldview, different leadership. John Muir was called out for his long history of racism concerning his beliefs toward indigenous people. And these were quotes from him. They seem to have no right place in the landscape. That despite the fact they lived there for thousands of years very successfully. And he believed their peoples, villages, and their ways of life should be destroyed in order to have unblighted, unredeemed wilderness. Now, John Muir did a lot of great things. Without John Muir, I'm not sure that we would have had our national park system set aside at the time that it was. Gifford Pinchot, the first head of the U.S. Forest Service, believed that parks were created for Americans of only Northern European descent. This was accepted, but remember, these things were happening when women didn't even have the right to vote. And anybody know when Black women in America were finally given the right to vote?
Yeah.
It wasn't until the mid-1960s. We think of our own history as being a little glorified sometimes, but we have some blemishes, but we want to put the blemishes behind us, just know where we got our footing, and let's move along. So Kathleen, you want to tell them what we're going to be doing next?
Yes. You have already, I hope, read this article, and if you haven't, there's plenty of ways to look about it. Maybe I should give you a little bit of a history. If there is someone in the group who didn't get a chance to read it for whatever reason, that's fine. Basically, it's Basically, it's an article about how I felt. It's an article about how I felt when I looked around in my birding groups, of which I belong to 4. And I looked at the composition of the group, and I asked myself, who is this? Who are these birders? Who is a birder? And then even within the community of birders, again, 4 different sets, they had their own differences, but within 4 different sets, there were also subgroups within each set. And there were exclusionary activities, not intentional, truly not intentional. And John, go ahead. Ian, go ahead, join. And so I just started thinking about things. Who is a birder? How do we get that question that always bothers me so much? How do we get people interested? And how do I meet people who are interested, who don't perhaps even know there is such a thing as birding, except for those funny ladies with their weird hats and their binoculars? So what I would hope that you would do when you go through this is to discuss, look at number 1, salient points from this article that you can apply to Master Naturalist philosophy. Because I really believe the article doesn't have anything to do with birds per se. It's just cleverly written with birds in it, but it's not about birds. I think you'll find that out quickly. And how would you apply some of these salient points, or maybe not even apply the salient points? Have you ever thought about some of these things? And I guess that's really an open-ended question for you. So if in your group you decide you want to discuss the article as a whole, of course, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is perhaps take it by section and figure out what each section is saying. But the bottom line is, I believe that all birders should unite. So shall we go ahead and get into the groups?
Yes, we'll try 6 rooms this time since we had one that didn't form for strange reasons. And again, these are going to be randomly assigned. Oh, let's see. I don't want to add a room. I want to decrease a room. Okay. Okay. If you're assigned to room 6, I'm going to assign you to another one because only 2 of you are assigned to that room right now. So I'm recreate. There we are. Here we go. Okay. 6 rooms. So we're going to recreate. I'm going to open all and join the invitation. You'll have 10 minutes. Appoint a reporter for your group. We reconvene
Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. Just us in this one?
I guess. We got some more
What's up,
people. Hi,
y'all?
Sarah.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Hi, Amir.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure I'm supposed to talk. Because I talked last time, I wasn't sure I was supposed to. So I'll just watch.
I have not read it yet, to be honest.
Kayla says she's at work but can type.
Oh, cool.
Well, I'll just say, I guess from the master naturalist perspective, that article, it kind of focused on making birding more inclusive through making it about like the enjoyment of birding. And I think that goes with the mission of the master naturalist in terms of focusing on the enjoyment of the outdoors and having a passion for it and all that, kind of like what we discussed last week.
And just including everyone in it. Doesn't matter, your gender, your race, religion, anything like that. Just if you have a joy of birding, everyone coming together and experiencing that joy together. I would say in this first part here, it kind of talks about segregating each other. Some people are considered around the home birders, other people are away from the home birders, and birders just kind of, stick to their own. And like she said, I don't think this is necessarily just talking about birding. But it says, are such diversion or divisions necessary or simply unintentional oversights? I think it's a little bit of both. I think, people tend to stick to, if people are all out on a trail and they're all birding together, I think it's a little bit of both there, if you guys know what I'm saying. People tend to stick to their own, what they're comfortable with. I don't think it's necessarily because they think anything bad about other groups. People just tend to stick into what they're comfortable with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys done a lot of birding?
I have not.
I have not either, to be honest.
I
you?
have done. I have done a lot of birding.
Yeah.
In Egypt, and actually, I'm one of the co-founders of an organization that brought in a lot of youth into birding. But I think, sorry, because I was reading, I hadn't read, so I was sorry, I couldn't. I was trying to focus on
No,
both,
that's okay.
but it's hard. But I think like that definition that Kaufman gives about birding, that is trying to be about enjoyment, comes from a space where it wasn't about that. It comes from a space of like wanting, like that it was, I would say, not only just like white men as well, not even like women. Like white men had that kind of the world of birding, and that only recently has it opened up. So I feel like that definition is coming from a hope of inclusivity, but not a reality of inclusivity. That's my sense. And it requires a lot of work. Like, for example, back in Egypt, the organization I worked for, we needed to buy a whole bunch of binoculars. People just don't have access to binoculars, and they're expensive. If you want to have some good binoculars, they're not cheap. They're definitely not cheap in Egypt because we were getting them from abroad. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is where we were in Cairo, we had to go to special places because obviously with the city pollution and so forth, you had to get out a little bit. So we'd have to rent boats and go on the river, for example, to do birding. So it's not, I mean, we try to make it as accessible as possible, but, like the disability issue is one. Not everyone could get easily in the places that we wanted to go to. We don't have
very accessible trails like you do here in the United States. So just like there's a lot of like I love the definition, but when the rubber hits the road, it's a bit different, I think.
Sorry, what did you do to get people into birding? What was your pitch? Or was it pretty much when you handed people binoculars, you found that they would
Well,
just get into it themselves? Or
yeah, I mean, a lot of people, there was different, like I have a company that does outdoor environmental education back in Egypt. And so part of it was we were working with schools, and so we would take schools out and we were building a curriculum that supports their kind of school standards and stuff. But then we would put in all these other activities. It was like our little mission of like getting people to become naturalists that would just, get them exposed. Like none of them had ever held a pair of binoculars to look at birds. They might have held actually, it's easier to have kids that have gone to like an astronomy space or have looked at the stars or the planets, but not looked at birds before. So there's that piece working with schools, but also just the general public. Like now we have a ton of trips. I no longer work there because I'm here in the US, but the group still continues. And there's a ton of trips of like all sorts of different people who are just now, they have a pair of binoculars in their hand and someone who's teaching them. That's the other piece of it. It's like someone who's telling a story, someone who's explaining, someone who's telling you what to look for, because it's initially not so simple. You kind of need to look at like the shape of the birds, if it's hovering or not, like all these kinds of things. And so, having these elements, the actual tools, but also the people to inspire is important too. Yeah.
nice.
When the kids did it for the first time, were they pretty hooked?
Not everyone. Some were like, this is the most boring thing I've ever done in my life.
So, like kids here. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But some were like, I had never seen those colors, or I had never looked at that beak shape, or I had never realized these birds were even here. Like, what we do one thing where we go around the streets of Cairo and are looking for like owls. And it's like,
oh wow,
people are terrified of owls in Egypt, and they're all amongst us. Like they're just, and so it's just funny to like find owls.
Are there, because I know in here, like some of the Native American tribes, that they can't look at owls because of their religious beliefs. Is that the same? Do they have anything like that in Egypt as far as certain birds?
It's not religious, but it's cultural. But yes,
okay.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of bad omens and superstition amongst around owls for sure. Yeah.
I'm Pakistani, and owls get a very bad rap in terms of being really dumb. So
oh yeah,
when my parents were when we came here and they're like they're in the Western media, owls are like these mysterious, wise sort of beings in the mythology. It kind of made my parents laugh because they're like owls are really dumb. I don't know what they're talking about here in America. They run into things.
So Winnie the Pooh didn't do it for you?
Nah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, really? Ravens, Kayla? I had no idea. Ravens are seen as dumb? They're one of the smartest birds. I had no idea.
Oh, omen of death.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we have that too, actually. The black ravens, yeah.
A non-birding question. You guys doing okay with everything? Assignments and whatnot? No.
I'm a little behind, I will be
Yes,
honest. And a lot behind, but planning on catching up sometime this week or next week.
I don't think I'll ever catch up.
You'll be surprised. I told the last breakout group last year about weeks 3 and 4 is when I started to feel completely overwhelmed. And then like 5 to 7, those weeks I sort of got it all figured out. it smoothed out. So don't stress. And you guys don't have due dates, which is cool.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Kayla works until 8 p.m.
Ugh.
Oh man.
That's terrible. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna finish them. I'm just gonna lay it out right now.
Just get your 80% and you're good.
Yeah.
That's all you gotta worry about. There's no prize for getting 100%. You'll be good, Kayla.
Are we returning back? I guess.
Oh yeah, we got 30 seconds. Okay, I'll see you in there.
Yeah.
Okay, gradually coming back. So we'll wait till everybody is back here. That's not my dog. That's the macaw barking like a dog. Whatever home she was in had a small dog, and she barks like that. So I'm going to mute myself. Okay, Kathleen, I think they're all here. Do you want the screen up again for the questions, or just do a free form discussion here?
I think we should, well, hey, I want to vote. Everybody, you get to have power. You were empowered. If you, do you want free form or do you want a more formal? Free form, raise your hand or put a thumb up. Only one of you wants free form?
Oh, no, I'm seeing lots of hands go up.
There's a lot of hands, yeah.
You better free form it.
All right, we're free forming. We are free forming the birds. Okay. So was this really about birds? Free form, you're on. I might have to randomly call on you just so you don't feel too shy. Is there anyone who actually feels uncomfortable about being randomly called on? Please let me know, because I will not do that. All right, so here we go. Brad, unmute yourself and free form, please.
Okay, I guess in our group, we talked a little bit about, what it is to be a birder. Maybe sometimes, maybe some of these were my thoughts, but that I'm kind of a intermediate at best level birder. And if I see other people birding and they want to ask me what I'm seeing, I'm kind of intimidated. So I don't want to talk to them. But there's kind of a, maybe a self-segregating based on skill levels sometimes. And so there was kind of just that thought of the challenge of, just being open to learn, but like, is this person going to be open to teach me something, or do they just want to know what I saw and move on? So yeah, kind of that in general, but also that it seems that anytime you're with other people, that you have this one common thread, your lives may be completely different otherwise. So it's kind of a nice way to just have an opportunity to get to know someone better. First, you're talking about, seeing a Blackburnian warbler. And then the next thing you know, you're talking about, deeper things about each other's lives. And it is a good way to kind of to reach out and learn diverse viewpoints.
Brad, well stated, very, very well stated. Brad, because you had such a great statement, call on someone. Your reward.
I'm gonna pick sloth because sloth.
Yeah, I know.
I'm devastated with the slot that my kids put it on there and I can't get it off. I couldn't get it off in time. So this is Jeff. And We had great discussions. We didn't feel the article was about birding. I don't want to repeat what was already said, but we came up with some interesting other topics, and I'm gonna go with what I shared just because it was interesting. I'm homeschooling my 3 boys, and we're out at the Desert Outdoor Center at Lake Pleasant, and what blew me away is we see about 500 kids a week there, and they have this little store and they're not utilizing it. And I was saying, hey, we should sell some stuff to the kids. And the lady who's been there for 20 years goes, Jeff, not all the kids have the same amount of money. And I told the group, it impacted me in a deep way, where I was just like, whoa, I didn't think I didn't, that didn't register. You just think, oh, this is cute for kids, but not for the kids who can't afford the cute. And so it was very humbling, and I loved that.
Oh, it's kind of choking. Doesn't it kind of choke you up a little bit when you think about that? Yeah. It kind of chokes me up a little bit too, not just about the kids, but about, can I really afford that trip to Costa Rica? And what does it sound like when I talk to my friend down the road who maybe is struggling just to pay medical bills? Oh, I went to look at birds in Costa Rica. It's something to think about. All of this is something to think about. Maybe we're going to act on that a little later, but for now, we need to think about. Okay, not Brad, Jeff, right? I don't want to call you sloth. Okay, Jeff. Jeff, would you please call on someone?
Let's see. How about Sharon?
Okay. We talked, well, first of all, I must say.
We're in the same group. Sorry,
We're in the same group, but I read
Sorry.
the wrong article, so I listened to everybody else's stuff. And we sort of agreed it wasn't about birding. It was more about sort of hierarchies, and it could be taken as some people have stuff and some people don't. So yeah, it was an interesting discussion.
Sharon, you're up. Find somebody.
How about let's see who hasn't talked tonight.
Oh,
how about Ian?
We had a great discussion. We thought we were going to have Lisa write it all down, but the discussion ended up being much as folks have said. It's themed on birds, but obviously thinking about with Black Birders Week and how to sort of think differently and consider all of how we come to being a naturalist, how we come to nature. So what gates are erected? How are we keeping them? How can we remove them? How do different people come to these interactions from different perspectives, but for the same ultimate goal? Is it to look at birds? Is it to appreciate reptiles, to love plants, to learn about geology? Whatever that is, we're all coming from those different places, and to the challenge, but the good work is to honor all of those different vectors and ways, and to have a more enriching worldview and society from that. So I'll let any of the folks in my group chime in, but it's a really good conversation about kind of understanding how to open up our work to everybody.
Anybody from your group entering into this conversation?
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that since I took the notes for the group. We talked about a lot of different things. It was a great conversation. We talked about having, everybody's ideas valued to make them feel included or to help them feel included, and doing that enthusiastically, and that, really helps people feel like they're part of, what you're doing. We talked a little bit about, when you participate in different events and activities, you can, say that I'm here as a, a master naturalist versus, I'm here as a scientist or something like that. And so you don't necessarily need to be an expert in something to be able to participate. And so, when you do things that way, it maybe defines, what you're doing and doesn't make people feel left out because they're not, an expert in that area. So, we also talked about, people sharing different experiences. There's people in the group that are master naturalists from other states, and we might do things differently here in Arizona, but we can all share from, other experiences and, and enrich what we're doing. So those are some of the other points we talked about.
Well stated. Lisa, please find another person.
Oh, how about Kathleen?
Uh-oh, now we're in trouble. Where is she? She was here.
She's muted.
I'm
Oh.
here. Well, I've talked a lot, so I'm going to limit this. One thing that we talked about was the renaming of the birds and the motivation for doing that. But I do think that this applies to everything. It's just that we could have a lot of gatekeeping, and so I think that was the gist of it.
Anybody else from this esteemed group? All right, Kathleen, pick your
All
next.
right, there was one other thing I
Oh,
loved.
okay.
Kathy said, it took me a second to find my mute button.
Oh, thanks.
Just talking about like stepping outside our comfort zones and being inclusive. I loved how Kathy said when she's out birding, she'll see people and say, "Oh, do you want me to tell you the names of the birds? What are you looking at? Can I help you? Can I show you a picture?" I think that's just a perfect example of how we can be more inclusive.
Okay, excellent, Jill. Oh, now you muted yourself. You got to find somebody. You got to unmute.
I don't know. How am I supposed to pick somebody? The sloth name already got picked.
Oh, your favorite.
Brad, I see your name. Brad Wagstaff.
I already.
Oh,
had-
shoot, you already spoke. I just saw you on the top. Sorry, just kidding. Roxanne, you're the next one I see. Don't hate me. Sorry.
What, Roxanne, are you?
I was in the group with Lisa and Ian, so they pretty much said it all. I was just saying that when we talk about this group, when I talk about this group, it's like enthusiastically, and people seem to want to ask questions and learn more about it. So, but I'm just adding to what Lisa and Ian had said.
It was a good ad. Thank you. All right,
Kathleen, I think we have time for one more.
Yeah, I was gonna say, good luck finding the next one. Did she go away? Lisa, did you go away? Were you?
Roxanne.
What about
Where are
Donna?
you? Okay, Donna. It's finding that mute button, right? It's just a pain.
Yes.
Did I hear you say Donna?
Donna has issues with her microphone and speaker, so she won't
That's
be able
why.
to.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Donna.
Let's see. How about Galaxy Tab 50 or S6?
That's cool.
Okay. A couple of things that we talked about in our group that I thought may be a little different is, well, one of them was how, all of our experiences when you're in a birding group or any kind of other group, there's always the expert. And there's a couple different ways to be the expert. You can use it in a way where it makes you feel superior to other people and makes other people feel inferior, or you can be very generous with your knowledge. And as master naturalists, I think we need to be careful that we're in the latter category.
Mm-hmm. Point well made, because we are representatives, are we not?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and as representatives of a particular worldview, we hope to encourage others' participation as well, right? Right.
Exactly.
All right, I think I'm turning this over now to Karen, am I?
Yep.
Okay, it's yours. Take it away, Karen.
Okay, let's see. Share screen. We're going back to our presentation. So great work on that and some really good thoughts that were shared. So thank you all. We want to consider the case for diversity in natural resources. That's really what we're all about. We are here talking about the pillars of leadership is there, but it's also the pillars of stewardship, citizen or community science, that the name seems to be changing there, and education. So these are some ideas that were generated by a national group, why it's important to have diversity in natural resources. So I'm going to give you just a minute to look through this group, and then I would like to hear what you would consider to be the primary. If you were prioritizing these, which of these do you think should be brought to the forefront? So take just a minute to think about these. So who would like to offer what you think should be the highest priority, and briefly why you believe that way? Anybody?
I think just, for the concept of the group, the diversity is as natural as biodiversity. That would be at the forefront for me. Just it opens up the mind, it opens up the space to letting go of indifference.
Thank you, Jen. Somebody else, anybody have a different opinion on one of these as the high priority?
I would say, echoing Jen, but I would say just personally, I kind of reject the premise of how it's phrased and worded, because biodiversity is diversity of people also. So it's like sort of separating us from nature in a way that personally makes me kind of uncomfortable. But so I'd kind of take, if I could blend F into D, and then maybe even C again. I don't really see these as being different topics. I guess, this, like, considering the case, almost there's like, were it me, there'd be a parentheses for white people in order to have diversity in natural resources. But these are kind of all the same, or at least C, D, and F are the same idea in my mind.
That's an interesting point, Ian. Why do you think C was separated into its own talking point, so to speak? Anyone?
I think that the problem might be with the word traditional. Like, what does that really mean? Does that mean non-European Western science? So if traditional means more science, alternative science to Western science, then I think it's its own topic.
I took it to be that not that traditional ecological knowledge was indigenous knowledge. And I think, unfortunately, not only the dominant society doesn't know anything about it, it's actually been erased from a lot of the indigenous societies. So some people out there are really advocating for more and more of that knowledge, teaching their own people, and hopefully teaching us as well, because there's such a wealth of knowledge out there that, like I said, we know nothing about, and unfortunately a lot of it's been lost, I think.
That's an excellent point, Sharon. And if you've not read Braiding Sweetgrass, this really hits home. The innate traditional knowledge teachings that Robin Wall Kimmerer brings to the forefront. I've seen very few people who has that intimate connection with virtually every aspect of nature. and it opens our eyes to an entirely different worldview. So my ancestors came from, Western developed nations and such, and brought their ideas here, and they too frequently clashed with what was going on. The conquerors always know better than the conquered, right? For the sake of time, I just want you to be thinking about these, because we may come back and address these, and especially when we think about our chapter, you'll get to know some people who are of a non-dominant white culture, but we don't have many members. The ones we do are incredibly talented, and they add such richness to us, but we would like to get more diversity in our organization. And I will say your cohort is doing a great job with diversity across the demographics and age spectrum. So it's great to have many of the younger people joining us rather than having this be an older white kind of group. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Kathleen, we're going to keep a couple of these things for the future, but take just a moment to read this.
Me personally or everybody?
Oh, no, everybody, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And Kathleen, we only have a few minutes left, so we're going to not do the breakout here.
It's okay.
We'll do that another time, but why don't you just share this is what the B is for in D.I.B now. Share what happens when you were othered, and they'll get the idea very quickly here.
I'm not sure which time.
When you went to work for ASU.
All right, I can do that one. Interestingly enough, I worked initially in it's still called the College of Education. My area of expertise had to do with evaluation and inclusion activities for individuals in general settings. So I'm in a department of 20 people. Okay, so how many of these 20 people do you think had educational backgrounds where they interacted with kids? Throw out a number, I don't care, any number.
5.
Okay.
0.
Okay. Yeah. Yay. I guess you were in my department. How many of those people do you think were women?
Just you, probably.
Just me. For approximately 22 years of and I won't tell the rest of the time of my career, I was the only tenured faculty who was a woman. Now we had coming and goings, right? So now think about this. There is indeed, and we all know that there's sociological differences between how men and women interact and how men expect women to interact and how some women expect men to interact. So we who are women are very clear, and I'm sorry to be mean to you guys who are the guys, because you probably aren't these kinds of guys. There's a descriptor for men who are straightforward and get things done, and what would that descriptor be? Anybody? Throw it out.
Alpha.
Alpha could work. That'll work. Okay. I'll go with alpha. All right. And what is it for women who do exactly the same thing?
It's not a very nice word.
It's not a very nice
word. ... Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a very nice word. So do you think I felt like I felt warm fuzzies and belonging in this department? You don't have to answer that question. Bottom line is there were lots of people that I was friends with in that department, lots of wonderful people, but was I part of the boys group? No, I didn't play golf. And that's a sense of being othered. I was othered. I didn't play golf, and I didn't do some of the things that were expected of women. In fact, I did a lot of things that were not expected of women. And trust me, I am a woman. So there we go. All right, that's my story of othered. I love many of those people, so don't think that my whole life experience with ASU was intolerable. What I really liked about ASU was when they passed out the equity pay. And women were always at the bottom. I always got a raise just for being a woman. So, oh, well, there are pros and cons to everything. What can I say? All right,
Okay.
that's it. That's my other.
We're going to do a couple of these other things in future lessons, but we want to, we'll do that one later. Okay, Kathleen.
You want me to talk about this nice thing? Yes. Okay. So we have exclusion, integration, and belonging. And I bet all of you could probably do this just in your sleep without me doing it too. But exclusion, in exclusion, there might be moments, right, when you are allowed to be part of the group. Integration is integration when it uses a word like that? If you look at integration, I'm not answering any of these questions. I just want to throw these out for you to think about it. I want you to think about belonging and who can belong. Are there rules about who can belong and who cannot belong? Are there rules about integration? Are there rules about exclusion? So what we want to ask ourselves is, in our various roles in our communities, because I don't know anybody in this group who doesn't belong to at least 5 communities. In our communities, and some of them, are you excluded? Some of them, are you integrated? Some of them, do you belong? In your communities, are there others that you exclude? Are there others that you integrate partially? Are there others that are allowed to belong? And allowed is not chosen lightly. So we have hidden agendas that we need to think about when we talk about exclusion, integration, and belonging. And I'm going to tell you that a lot of your and mine biases are hidden even from ourselves. So hopefully as we go through these next 16 weeks, we'll begin to become aware of what we can do to increase belonging for others and increase our belonging in one of our communities. Okay, now we have something really important to tell you. So there's a key word in there, and this really applies to you. Okay, so what would Smokey Bear do? I hope you keep that in your mind. Okay, but what is the key word? What do you think would be the key word in there? We've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the biggest word, the most important word of those 5?
You.
Everybody, let's say it together. You.
You.
Oh, you're so shy. Okay, and it's true, because in my belief system, and you should know my belief system is we do want all those wonderful goals, all those wonderful aspirations, and that's what they are. But in the end, only you can make a change, and you can make a change at your level. And that's what we're talking about when we say we want to talk about belonging. So it's only you. So don't put out that match, shut down that fire, and prevent wildfires. You. Okay, that's my spiel about integration.
Thank you, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
So we're going to use we have a couple other slides and things we'll be using in future lessons. As Kathleen said, we want to integrate this throughout the entire time. So we don't want to do it, one shot and done. This is something that is on our minds and should be on our minds continually. So we're going to do our mentor group breakdowns. Hopefully you all remember which room number you're supposed to go in. Mentors